Hello one and all, my name is John Clare, this is John's Dark Art, and as always you are very welcome. Now, I wanted to talk about greed today, another one of the 7 deadly sins, and I want to bring up a few here now for you to have a look at. And as you can see, I've chosen a raccoon. Now you may be wondering to yourself, John, why did you choose a raccoon? Well, that's a very good question. So the reason for the choice of the raccoon was simple. A, I like raccoons, they're cute and I wanted to draw one. But also, they do have black bands across their eyes that makes them look like little thieves, like little highwaymen. And also, if you allow them to get into your house and rob your pantry, they quite happily will. So with that in mind, let's go into the walkthrough. I'll walk you through my decisions and the creation of this piece, and we'll do that now. So here we are, we're in Procreate now, and here is our greedy little fucker there. And now what we're going to do, if we go into canvas and canvas information, go into our statistics, as you can see this took me 10 hours and 52 minutes and total strokes made were 2,738. Okay, so on average, you can probably tell the last few drawings, 10 hours seems to be about the average, 10-12 hours. So if we go into our time-lapse replay, he who's not content with what he has would not be content with what he would not have. That is Socrates, which I think is pretty true, to be honest with you. It's kind of like a very true adage. So, you know, if you're not content with what you have and you just want more than you require, which could also be, as last week, with gluttony, or you could also be seen as, you know, one of the other sins that we're going to be talking about at some point in the future, which will be envy. But in terms of greed, I think it's still pretty appropriate, because, you know, if all you want is more than what you have, that's in essence, that's what greed is, wanting more than what you have, and at the expense of everyone else, only to serve your own selfishness and your own greediness, your own avarice. So anyway, let's rock and roll. Let's get into the actual drawing itself. And here I am, very roughly sketching out everything. I've been watching some videos recently on how other people draw on YouTube, and I find it fascinating because I love seeing how other people create and how other people create artwork. With a lot of people, it seems to be like I kind of build out very roughly and then hone it as I go through. But I suppose it's the style in which I draw. I've got, you know, I do try to be quite realistic in my drawings. I do have a certain style in which I shade. I don't necessarily tend to focus on outlines unless I feel it's necessary. But yeah, there's this whole kind of talking about the type of drawings. Like you'll see, like a lot of my drawings, like a lot of my lines in the initial stages tend to be quite rough. Now, in some quarters, that could be seen as being uncertain. In that case, then I would agree, because at this stage, what I'm doing is I'm basically putting marks down to roughly delineate where my drawing's going to be. And I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. I mean, it works for me. So, and if it works for you, do it that way. If it doesn't, then don't. If you're looking to achieve a specific effect, then maybe you need to be a bit more certain and a bit more confident in your line making. But for me, I just, you know, it's not really that important, you know, unless I'm drawing something more from imagination, which I don't really like doing anymore. I used to do it a lot when I was younger, but I feel references are important, because if you want to achieve some degree of accuracy within your artwork and within your drawings, you do need references, whether it be 2D references from photographs or 3D references from real life, you know, going to a life drawing class and drawing human figures in real life, or setting up a still life, you know, with some fruit and a bowl or whatever, you know, doing whatever you need to kind of make the art that you want to make, you know. So it's not that there isn't any one right way, there's many right ways, but you just got to find the right way that works best for you, in my view at least, anyway. So anyway, I digress, let's carry on. So here I am roughly marking out where the raccoon's going to be, and once I'm more or less happy with the way it's going to look, there's going to be a lot more tweaking as we go through, as you could probably well imagine. But anyway, so I will start with the eyes, probably one of the best places to start. As I said last week, I mean, the eyes are probably one of the most single important things that you need to be able to draw and draw effectively, because it's what, whether it's an animal or a human, you want to have an engaging figure, something that draws you in, and a great way of doing that is having something looking back out at you, you know. So let's move forward a little bit, and here I am kind of, again, very roughly kind of, well, around the eyes I'm actually, you know, around the eyes is fairly good. Big black eyes looking back at you, and I'm honing around that side of the face and kind of working my way around a little bit. See, this is the reason why my mark making is very rough to begin with, because it's just there temporarily. I don't want to put any marks down or be precious about my mark making. You know, not every mark's going to show, and it doesn't matter. You know, it's the end result that's important as far as I'm concerned. So I'm moving through, drawing the ears, and starting to, you know, build out the drawing a lot more. And again, it's all directional shading. It's like the whole thing with, as you can probably tell, if you zoom right in, you can see all I'm literally doing is like wavy lines, lots of squiggly lines. But because I'm layering those on top of each other and like using pressure, because like the great thing about the iPad Pro, especially if you're using like the second generation Apple Pencil, the pressure sensitivity on this is fantastic. So you can be really light or you can be really heavy, and everything in between. So sometimes it's not just about like how many marks you're laying down, but the pressure of the marks that you're making. Do you want it to be darker? Do you need it to be lighter? If it's too dark, then great. Use your eraser tool, select the same brush, bring it back down again. At this point here, I've noticed I've moved the head across. Now, obviously, I wasn't happy with the composition at that point. So just by doing that, I mean, do I think it's improved it? It probably has done. It maybe probably gives it a little bit more balance. It makes it look like he's more kind of, I think it actually, you know, if you look at the spine, the way the spine, I've kind of marked out where the spine is kind of curving round. Now, I think that's probably why I've kind of moved the head over a little bit. So it kind of gives it a little bit more of a natural stance. But I'm only guessing at this point. I'm either guessing or justifying my decisions from 3 years ago here, so you've got to bear with me. So again, bringing it around the fur and honing everything as we go. I'm just taking my time. Now, if I remember rightly, the hands are a right bugger to draw. Hands are a bugger to draw in general. That's, you know, it talks to any artist. Doesn't matter how proficient they are. I mean, there's artists more proficient than me at drawing hands, and I'm pretty sure like they still, if they're not working at it constantly, it is the tricky thing to draw, and that's just human hands. Raccoons have got little hands as well, and they're tricky little buggers to draw. I found them to be very tricky to draw. To the point, you can see me once I've finished shading that foot in, that I've actually done a little bit of adjustments here on the paws. So I've actually extended them out, made them bigger, and then once I was fairly happy with it, then I kind of settled and carried on with the rest of the drawing. Bringing up highlights. See, this is what I mean again, like sometimes if you want to bring up highlights, use your eraser brush. I'm doing his banded tail as well. Raccoons are, I mean, they are cute animals, man. I love them. Like, my favourite MCU character is Rocket Raccoon. There we go, his little claws. There we go. There's Greed. So now what we'll do is we'll round this out, and I think that might be a good idea, don't you? Okay, so that was Greed. As you can probably imagine, at this stage of the conversation, I will be putting out for sale on www.johnsdarkart.com, and it will be available in 2 sizes and 2 prices. That will be A3 at €75 and A4 at €45. So if you like what we're doing and you want to help support us in what we're doing, then please head over to www.johnsdarkart.com, pick yourself up a print, be very much appreciated. Thank you very much. Greed. Interesting subject, because It does relate quite a lot to what we were talking about last week with gluttony, but I want to try and keep it focused very much on the specific with greed itself. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go into the actual dictionary definition, which is an intense and selfish desire for something, especially wealth, power, or food. And if we go on Wikipedia here, it says, as defined outside Christian writings, greed is an inordinate desire to acquire or possess more than one needs, especially with respect to material wealth. Thomas Aquinas considers that, like pride, it can lead to evil. Thomas Aquinas being a very famous Christian writer. Now, in terms of how greed is perceived in today's day and age, like with pride, I think pride, the meaning of pride has kind of shifted quite a lot over time. So, whereas once upon a time it was seen as very much a sinful aspect for a human to have, the problem with pride is it's also like it can be a good thing in terms of how having confidence in oneself and having self-belief. But with greed, you can't really do that, because greed, when it comes to the selfish need to acquire more than you need, it often means that other people are going to suffer, or the environment is going to suffer, which we'll cover. Essentially what it means is like having the resources to help others in society, but then choosing not to do so. A brilliant example in fiction, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie There Will Be Blood. Now, that is probably one of the best depictions of how greed is a detrimental force than any other work of fiction that I've come across. Because the story of Daniel Plainview is his sheer absolute resolution to become an oil baron, to dig for oil, to accumulate wealth. In some respects, that's to be respected. What ends up happening in the end is that you see during the course of the film how his actions, whether it be his adoption of young HW, and how through his own actions, deafens his son. When he gets in the way, it becomes a problem for him. He packs him off to boarding school. Later in the film, close to the end, when HW comes in looking for his share of the business, Daniel Plainview very, very plainly tells him, "You're a baby in a basket. You're a baby in a basket." Basically saying, you're not really my son, and you're not entitled to absolutely anything of my estate. And sends him packing. And then you see his relationship with Eli, and how this local religious leader is constantly in conflict with Daniel Plainview, using religion as a manipulative tactic in order to try and to generate power and wealth for himself. Whereas Daniel Plainview is also trying to generate power and wealth for himself by digging holes under people's ground. And by the end, he has everything, but yet he has nothing. The thing with greed, it's very hollow, you know, because what you're doing is, whatever your motivations may be, and whatever you choose to tell yourself, greed, in the end, no matter how much money you have, no matter how much stuff you have, if your only motivation in life is to selfishly accrue as much resources as possible, then in the end you have nothing. Like if you look at what's going on in Brazil at the moment, I mentioned it in last week's video about how trees are getting hacked down in the Amazon and the destruction of the environment. Well, in Brazil right now, the Amazon, which is probably one of the most single important biospheres on our planet, and is responsible for taking out a lot of the CO2 that we're sticking up in the air. So massively useful carbon sink. But there are palm oil farms, so they'll clear rainforests, these massively important biodiverse areas of the planet, and hack all that away just so they can grow palm oil, which is massively profitable. So you can understand why people do that. And the reason why people are doing it is surely out of greed, you know. By destroying something that benefits the world only to benefit their own bottom line. And it's a tragedy. And it's not just on a geopolitical sense. Like throughout America, throughout the rest of the world, wherever anyone discovers oil, gas, coal, any resource, any fossil fuel that we can burn to generate energy, the amount of political maneuvering, the amount of backhanders, lobbyists influencing politicians, this is going on since time immemorial. As long as there has been politicians and corporations, there's been corporations trying to influence politicians. Usually, maybe not through direct financial benefit, but usually through, oh yeah, we'll give you money for X projects, or we'll give you a seat on our board. Like, for instance, Gerhard Schroeder, thanks to his involvement with Russia prior to the war in Ukraine, he was the German Chancellor. And when he left, he went onto the board of Gazprom and was very much instrumental in the whole Nord Stream pipeline, which, doesn't work anymore for mysterious reasons. Greedy people tend to influence each other as well, is essentially what I'm getting at there. And how greed kind of greases the wheels and enables people and corporations to accumulate incredible wealth to the detriment of the environment and to the detriment of society. And not only that, I mean, it's not even just on those kind of levels, on geopolitical levels or corporate levels. I mean, it can happen within families too. Like, I remember hearing a quote from a relation once, and I thought it was brilliant. Where there's a will, there's a war. Because, like, I imagine with most wills, it's usually, say for instance, I was to pass on and leave it to my as yet non-existent children. I don't have any kids at the moment. But say if I were to have, and I pass on equally my estate, and then one decides they want more than the rest. So the next thing, there's legal letters flying around how one child deserves more than the other for whatever reasons that they decide to conjure. And the next thing is, they're all fighting amongst themselves. And it's sad, because like seeing how money and property and whatever else can shatter a family for what to my mind is a ridiculous reason. I don't know. I think greed is ultimately very destructive and will ultimately lead to your alienation. If you let greed become your motivational force to decide that's the thing that drives you, just to accumulate wealth at the expense of society, at the expense of the environment, at the expense of your family, then no good can come from it. Because at the end of the day, the person who's going to lose is going to be you. You may have all the stuff that you could ever need and then some. But if you're on your own and you ain't got anyone to share it with, what good is it to you? It's not something I want for myself. It's not something I want for my family or friends. One thing I will say before I round this out is that I don't necessarily see that if someone's driven to do well for themselves and to achieve success, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I want to clearly point that out. I want to be successful. I want this project to be successful. I want me and Roman to do very well from this project. And hopefully we will. But unless we are able to not only benefit those who are watching, if you're not getting any benefit from this, whether it's like learning a bit about art and how that could be implemented into your own work, or maybe like, taking some advice that I might impart and doing something positive with it. I want to try and do something positive. I want to try and give back. I want to try and sell prints, yes. I want to generate money, yes, but I want to reinvest that money into doing what we're doing here and expanding it out and being able to create more artwork, having our own studio. Those things I don't think are greedy. There's a reason for it. It's only when you get to the point where you have more than you need and you're not willing to share it at that point, then greed starts becoming a factor. And it's something that, we as a society and myself, with this project and Roman and, anyone else who becomes involved with it, we need to be very mindful of, because, if all it is about making money for the sake of making money, then what's the point of doing it in the first place? There has to be a greater good, and there has to be something that we are able to kind of, make that is beneficial for any audience that we generate. Anyway, I think I've said all I'm going to say on this particular matter. And we'll round it out by saying, look, just don't be greedy if you can help it, and I'll do the same. And we'll leave it there. Anyway, my name has been John Clare. This has been John's Dark Heart. And as always, you have been very welcome. Until next time.